Hi, COP 1000 students. Welcome to Module 8A. In this module, we're going to introduce and discuss the while loop, which is our first repetition statement. Before loops, or before now, our programs ran from top down, so from top down toward the bottom. As our programs were going from top down, they may have turned left or right if they hit an if statement, but regardless, they can still headed from the top toward the bottom. Now, a loop, on the other hand, or repetition, allows the program to make kind of like a U-turn and go back up and execute code over and over and over again. Come down, 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 go back up and execute over and over again. Down, go back up, execute over and over again. All programming languages have a structure available to loop or repeat code. Hopefully you're going to agree at the end of this module that loops are pretty powerful, pretty cool, and they can shorten your source code and make your programs better. Here's a flow chart of a loop. It starts with the start, executes some type of code, comes down and tests a condition that was set in this code. If the condition is true, goes back up, does some code again, and continues to do that until this condition is eventually false. Then it heads this way, possibly executes some more code, and then stops. So here's the loop right here. There are several types of loops. In most programming languages, there are three. There's the while loop, the for loop, and the do while loop. Python does not offer this do while loop. Even though it doesn't have it, the language doesn't lose much. It's just kind of a matter of convenience. The syntax of this while loop, the most popular loop, is the keyword while and then a condition. So this is just very similar, just like the if statement's condition. So while this condition is true, execute a statement, 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 and then continue in this block until this condition is false. Once that condition is false, we leave the while loop and execute the next statement, or the first statement after the loop. For these to all be a part of the while loop, they have to be evenly indented under the while. Again, there are two types of, or not again, there are two types of while loops, and those are counter-controlled and sentinel-controlled. On a counter-controlled, we have a variable that we change its value or increment, decrement, do something to, so eventually the loop condition becomes false. Typically on a counter-controlled loop, we know how many times the iteration is going to occur. A sentinel-controlled loop is a little different. It enables the user to determine when the loop will stop. For example, let's say we play a game and then you say, do you want to play again? I have no idea how many times they would say yes, so the number of iterations are not known, but eventually they should say no and the loop would stop. All loops or all while loops are going to have a loop control variable, and this is going to be a part of the condition, and it's going to eventually make the loop stop by that condition being false. Here's an example of a counter-controlled loop. So I'm in main. Inside of main, I set a variable called counter to 0. And I loop while this counter's value is less than 10. So is 0 less than 10? That's true. So I go into the loop. I print line number, counter is 0, 0 plus 1, it's going to say line number 1. This statement here is the same as counter gets, counter plus 1. This is shorthand notation. It's in the book. Counter plus equal 1. Again, same as that. Counter will now go from 0 to 1. While 1 is less than 10, print line number 1 plus 1, which is 2, and this would continue until counter eventually equals 10. We go back up, counter equals 10. Is 10 less than 10? No, and it stops and leaves the loop. Here's an example of a sentinel-controlled loop. A sentinel-controlled loop. I'm going to keep the counter just so I can show these line numbers, but I'm going to create a variable of type boolean or bool, and this variable can only equal true or false. So this variable again could equal true or false, and that's the only thing it could equal. So true or false, all conditions are true or false. So this variable all by itself is a condition. While, again, or while true, print the line, increment the counter, and then ask the user, hey, you want to keep going, yes or no? You want to keep going, yes or no? So we're telling the user to press Y or N. The users sometimes just press the key Y on the keyboard, and they're not positive if the caps lock is on or not. So this little guy right here is kind of cool. After a string, I could say dot capitalize, and it'll take that string and capitalize it on the fly. So what goes in here, providing they press Y or N, would be a capital Y or a capital N. So I'm going to make this condition true or false again. I'm going to say, well, this value equals a capital Y. Not a little y, but a capital Y. If that's true, again equals true. If that's false, again equals false. Go back up, test again. I will stay in this loop forever until the user presses Y. Once they do, the loop ends. Here's another sample program, getting the average. Getting the average. So in main, I set a variable called total and a variable called count. I'm going to loop while count is greater than 0. What this thing is going to do is accumulate all the values between 1 and 1,000. So what is the sum of all the numbers between 1 and 1,000? So while 1,000 is greater than 0, I'm going to take the 0 in count and add it to 0. Then I'm going to take 1 from the count. It's going to be 999. I'm sorry, I said 0. I'm going to take the 1,000 and add it to total. Then I'm going to eventually loop. It's going to be 999, add it to total. Loop again, it's going to be 998, add that to total. Loop again, it's going to be 997, all the way down to 1. When it's 1, I add the 1 to the total. Come in, subtract 1 from the count. Again, it's eventually 0. 0 is no longer greater than 0. So I leave the loop. These two indented statements are with the loop. And I say average gets total divided by 1,000, because there were 1,000 numbers. And then I'm going to print the sum of the values is total. The average of the values is average. Here's the output. Pretty cool. Quick summary. Loops allow a program to go back up, execute a block of code over and over again. There are two types of loops in Python, the while and the for. There are, of the while loop, there's a counter-controlled, a sentinel-controlled, and we always need a loop variable. Okay, I'm going to do another example in the next video. That's it for now. See you in the next video.